All right, we're live. This is Johanna,
Johanna. Yeah,
and
Johanna.
sorry. This is a chronic illness sufferer. Seems to be doing really well or recovered. She'll correct me in a second.
Mhm.
Um, she graciously agreed to do an interview with me. It, and maybe tell us about some of her path to healing. So welcome.
Thank
Uh,
you.
do you have anything you want to promote? We could probably bring that up like right away.
Well, I just started my channel like a couple weeks ago. So if you just look up my name, Johanna Vang,
Okay.
so and you'll be able to find my videos. And I'm just I just started. They're not fancy or anything. And I'm just trying to get the word out there about how I healed and I want to help people basically. So yeah, so you can check it out, and I'll be adding to that as time goes. So
Okay. I will get her the link it, to make sure everyone can find it. I'll post that below.
thanks.
Yeah. So the following isn't medical advice. Obviously, this is just about our journey. Neither one of us are doctors or medical professionals, nor do we know you, or or would even be able to diagnose to help much. So we're just here mainly for support and to tell you about our journey and maybe some of the things that we've tried and just share hopeful message. Um, all right, uh, let's kind of dive in. Do you want to talk about yourself a little bit, like your life or what you're doing now?
So there's a lot, I guess. So I am just a mom, and I owned two businesses. I had a bakery and a food truck before I fell ill. And I have 8 kids, and I homeschooled them. So I had a really busy life, and I was working 80 hours a week and my businesses and stuff. And we live in Wisconsin, which is central Wisconsin, which is really prone to having deer ticks. And it was kind of a normal part of our life. Um, like, actually, 4 out of my 5 biological children had Lyme before they were 3. So like it was just kind of normal. Um, and so my health crash, really the worst of it, happened in 2021, after I got the COVID vaccine. And then I started to be able to smell mold. And I just thought my kids had brought something in crazy into our house and like left it in their backpack or something. I couldn't find it anywhere. And then we all got sick with like this bad chest cold, and my kids got rashes and stuff. Um, and the doctor, tried to treat the kids with antibiotics, and some of my kids got allergic reactions. It was just kind of crazy. We didn't really know what was going on. And then it was a perfect storm for me because right in the midst of that, I got bit by a tick. And like a week later, I had a huge bullseye on my thigh. So, um, and that just started this horrific journey for me that I've been on for the last like almost 2 years. Um, and my health just spiraled out of control. Nobody knew that I had mold toxicity. They'd all just thought I had Lyme, and they tried to treat me for Lyme. And I just ended up having allergic reactions to the antibiotics and getting sicker and sicker. And to where I couldn't walk, I was bedridden. I could barely talk. I had like almost no cognitive abilities. I had like such huge memory loss, encephalitis, like you name it. I could barely see. Um, and I had just tons of psychological symptoms like fear, anxiety, panic attacks, rage, just like it was like I was a completely different person. Um, yeah, it was really horrific. And I finally went to a got in to see an actual tick specialist. And he diagnosed me with other diseases as well as Lyme. So he said I had Babesia and Bartonella as well as Lyme. He didn't recognize that I had mold toxicity. He should have, but he didn't. And he put me on a different antibiotic. But within a few days, I had a really bad anaphylactic reaction. The ambulance had to come and get me. I was rushed to the ER. And, when I got back from the hospital from that, I turned to my husband and I said, like, I just had this instinct that I shouldn't go back in my house. It was this weird, like, just, I knew there was something in there that was making me sick, because I always felt slightly better when I wasn't in our house. But I was in our house most of the time because I was like, I couldn't really move much. So so I slept in my truck. I didn't even go in the house. And I could tell I felt slightly different. And then in the morning, I went in like to use, my husband helped me get in the house so I could use the bathroom, and my ears started ringing super loudly, and my brain just felt like it was like swirling around in my head, and there's like this huge warnings there was something wrong. And so then I ended up, obviously going back out of the house and got to talk to my doctor, and they said, yeah, don't take that antibiotic anymore. You had anaphylaxis to that. And after, like, he wanted to consult with some others, and they got back to me and said they thought maybe I should be tested for mold because I was worse in the house. And so they did that, and it takes like 3 to 4 weeks to get the results back. So in the meantime, he told me not to go in the house at all, if possible. And if I did, I had to wear like a respirator. And I ended up buying a tent and just staying in our yard. And it was super obvious within just a few days that, like, I started to actually get slightly better. Like, I actually slept for like almost 6 hours, where before I was sleeping like 1 hour at night. I had just extreme insomnia. And I heard that about your story too, like where you just,
Yeah. Oh, it's brutal.
and it's so
Brutal.
scary. It's super scary because you
Mhm.
feel so horrible. And with mold toxicity, you have all these psychological problems, like you have fear and anxiety and rage and all of that going on all at the same time. And at night, I would often feel like I was choking when I was in our house. So, like, being outside, it was an obvious difference. And I remember waking up, I took a picture of myself that morning. Like, I looked different, because I had slept. Like, it felt so good, even though I was still really sick. So I knew, like, this is what it was, like, even before we got those results back. But, I live in Wisconsin, and so this was in the fall, and it's starting to get cold. Like, it was like 40 degrees at night, and it was, starting to rain, and like, a tent isn't, I just had a cheap tent from Walmart. It wasn't going to be something I could like live in, and I didn't know anything about toxicity or how long it would take for me to get better. And I still had all these tick diseases. So my doctor finally got the results, and I was like off the charts for gliotoxins and steric and then I was also elevated like above toxic level for ochratoxin A. And so when I talk about my mold toxicity, I usually just leave the ochratoxin out because it wasn't that significant. But the gliotoxins definitely caused the majority of the issues for me. Gliotoxins are a neurotoxin, and they affect so many systems in your body. And so even before we got these results back, I started having like anaphylaxis to foods, and just like every day I felt like now I was getting something new. Like, I couldn't have wheat, I couldn't have strawberries, I couldn't have meat, like, just bizarre. And because I had never had food allergies before except for to walnuts. And so it was making me terrified to eat because I didn't know if I was gonna like die, from just a simple meal. So with gliotoxins, turns out that gliotoxins inhibit your body from producing the chemical that breaks down histamines. So eventually your body just gets like, if you think of your body as having like a bowl or a cup to be able to hold amount of histamine before you would have an anaphylactic reaction, my cup was like always full. And so then if I added anything that would release histamines into my diet, it was going to overflow and I would have a reaction. So my doctor diagnosed with mast cell activation syndrome, which is basically that, where you have where you're on the verge of this anaphylaxis, like kind of all the time. And so he had me switch to an all herbal protocol for my tick diseases. And he had me go on to a low histamine diet and take a supplement called HistDAO, which is an enzyme, that's supposed to help. You're supposed to take it before a meal so that you don't have a bad reaction to whatever you eat. So, and I can give you lots of information about the, like low histamine diets and how to deal with MCAS if you want. So during that time, while we were waiting for the results, we decided that we needed to build me a structure to live in for the winter.
Okay.
And we thought it was just going to be temporary because, like we didn't really know what was going on. So we built a tiny home and put it at the very back of our property, because I had also developed a really bad sensitivity to EMFs. And so like Wi-Fi would just make my brain go crazy. Like I couldn't hold my phone to my ear. And at first I always thought it was just like the sound of people's voices that was bothering me, but it was actually the frequencies. And so I wanted to be as far away from signals basically as possible. So we have 13 acres and I put myself way at the back in the woods. And and I moved in there at about the 6-week mark, being out of our home. And it was pretty cold by then. So it was like perfect timing. And those herbal medicines really started to work. But by that 6-week time, like I had lost at least half of my symptoms. So before, I couldn't see well. I had this neuropathy, like basically almost paralysis on the whole left side of my body. That went away. And that choking sensation, the ear pain, like I had so many symptoms and they all went away except for the classic ones for the tick diseases. And the other symptoms that didn't go away was the insomnia and the psychological issues. Those lasted. And, it's kind of hard to tell with Lyme versus mold toxicity because they have a lot of the same symptoms. Yeah. So they really, really overlap. And that's why mold toxicity is missed, honestly, in most Lyme patients, because their symptoms are like, with mold toxicity, you get achy joints and you get random pains in your body and inflammation. And well, you do that with Lyme too. So for me to say like, oh, all my mold toxicity symptoms went away, they didn't, but I can't really distinguish what was just Lyme and what was just mold toxicity, because I still had toxicity for like the next 7 months. So I moved into this little cabin and I treating with the herbs. And when you have tick-borne diseases, one way you know that your treatment is working is if you have the classic symptoms get worse. They'll get worse before they get better. And that is called a Herxheimer effect. Have you heard of that before?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
You can go ahead and explain it though.
Okay. So that's basically what happens is as you kill the pathogen, the pathogen releases its toxins. And those toxins will make you feel really sick. And you'll tend to get worsening symptoms, like the classic ones, plus like nausea. And it's kind of like symptoms of toxicity, honestly, because your body's getting overloaded with the toxins that these pathogens are letting off. You got to get them out of your body, otherwise you just feel horrible. And so I was dealing with this mold toxicity and the killing off of all of these bacteria, and my body really got overloaded. Like, so in the Lyme world and mold toxicity, we're pretty open about our bodily functions.
Go
So
for it.
just so you guys know, like, I'm just gonna go all out.
Here it comes. We're going to talk about enemas, I think, or colonics or
Yeah,
something.
oh yeah. So I was only having a bowel movement like once every 2 weeks, guys. So that
Yikes.
is totally toxic in itself, right? Like one
Yeah,
of
sepsis.
the ways that you get toxins out of your body is by having a bowel movement, peeing, sweating, and then sleeping. Sleeping is the only way that your brain can let off its toxins. And um, and so I wasn't sleeping and I wasn't having bowel movements. I was sweating like crazy though. So for some reason, that detox pathway works for me. I would be just drenched in sweat every night and I would stink so badly. That's a really common thing with mold toxicity, is that you reek when you sweat. And so like every night I was just drenched. And so yeah, so the Herxheimer effect. So you need to get these toxins out of your body in order to basically survive the killing off of these diseases, because it can get just horrific. Your symptoms, like you can start losing your hair, you can just the nausea is just horrible. So yeah, and so with the Herxheimer effect, for example, with Bartonella, that's a tick-borne disease that I had. Bartonella's main symptoms are psychological symptoms. So rage, depersonalization, derealization. So those are like where you start to kind of lose touch with reality, where you feel like everything around you isn't actually real. You kind of almost feel like you're hallucinating all the time. The other thing that happened to me, and I'm not sure if it was mold toxicity or Bartonella, because they can both do this, is I suddenly lost like all emotions except for anger and like extreme depression. And I lost the ability to connect to people. So like I could look at my child and feel absolutely nothing. I could look at my husband and just be angry. I didn't feel anything else. And, I mentioned I have 8 kids, and this made my life pretty miserable because they were still living in the original house. None of them were sick, just me. And so when they would come near me, I would smell the mold on them, and just instantly my body would freak out and I would go into a rage basically, and I'd have to hide that because like I logically knew that they weren't doing anything wrong. So I was like trying to hide all the time, like this anger and just like this deadness otherwise, like, and trying to pretend like that I still felt like a normal person. But but then, and I started to notice that they were treating me differently, like that they were getting really snippy and angry around me. And it took me quite a while to realize like that I just needed to tell them what was going on, that this was my disease. It wasn't like, and they really felt like I just didn't love them, and,
Oh,
so it's a really hard thing to go through. So communicating was huge. And with my husband, it was really, really hard. Like, I don't think that's one thing I've noticed in these groups that I'm in, like the mold and Lyme groups, is that relationships don't make it. And I think that this is why, is because the person who's sick doesn't even realize at first that this is happening to them. Like, I didn't realize that I didn't feel anything. Like, it just was happening um, until like a month in. And the family, people who love you, don't know what it's like to go through this. And so I had to learn how to communicate what was going on with me. And it was really, really rough. I'm not going to lie. The other symptom that I had from Bartonella that really freaked me out as I was herxing, because these symptoms just get really strong, was with Bartonella, if you turn your head from side to side, you'll hear this crunching, bone crackling sound. It's classic Bartonella. Do you have it?
No.
Good. And as I took the meds for this, my neck basically became unstable. Like, I couldn't hold my head up. It was really scary. And I had to like kind of prop my head up with my hand. Otherwise it was super painful. And I felt like my spine was being crushed. And, that lasted for like a month and a half. It was really freaky. But yeah, so people often ask, what is a herx? Like, what does it feel like? And I asked that back when I lived in my house still, because I was getting all those weird symptoms. Like, my nails were turning yellow. I had bright red dots all over my hands. I had all these bizarre, like electric shocks, all these weird things happening to me. And people were telling me that I was herxing. And that is not a herx, guys. That's like a bad reaction. So I always try to really clarify with people, a herx should just be those classic symptoms of the diseases that are listed for them, plus a lot of nausea and like dizziness and feeling unstable, but not electric shocks and not bright yellow nails, things that I was going through. So yeah, because I think that's a really legitimate question. Like, what does a herx feel like? And so once I got out of my house and here into this little cottage, I really understood better what a herx was. So anyway, so I'm on all these herbs, and it took me, but the problem was I was not able to have a bowel movement. And so I'm just staying in this toxicity this whole time.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
I
could I
started,
jump in real quick?
yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, I just want to let people know that if you think about it, the liver has really one physical outlet, and
Mm-hmm.
that's it is in the top, towards the top of your intestines.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're not having a bowel movement, that's just one of many problems. You call it,
Mm-hmm.
on top of having a lot of matter fermenting
Mm-hmm.
longer than it should. But the liver has that one exit through the bile into the intestine. So I just want to throw that in there again. Not
Yeah.
medical advice, but something to be aware of. Some
Yeah.
people like binders for that sometimes.
Right.
Anyways, go ahead. I'm sorry for interrupting.
No, it's fine. The thing with binders, um, just to tell people what a binder is, it's basically things will bind to whatever you're using. Like if you use charcoal, charcoal will basically grab toxins, but it can also grab even nutrients. And then as it works its way out through your body, it will, like, things will basically collect with it in a way, right? So the thing with binders though is they tend to be constipating. And so like
Yeah,
I couldn't take any binders because my doctor told me I couldn't until I started having regular bowel movements. And most people, the way you heal from mold toxicity is you take binders to get all the toxins out of your body. So, so I was overloading my body with dead bacteria, the pathogens and stuff that I had from the tick diseases, and I still had all this toxicity. And so I started researching And I kept hearing people say, well, you need to open your detox pathways. They just throw that phrase out there like
Yeah,
all
I've
the
heard
time.
it a million times.
And
We didn't,
nobody would tell you how to do it.
they
Like,
go,
or
they
even
go
what that
silent. Yeah.
was. Yeah. And so, and I mentioned it already, that the way your body detoxes, you pee, you poop, you sweat, you sleep, right? So if you're having trouble with any of those consistently, then your detox pathway is not open. Okay. So I started researching what that meant and how to open them. And so around the 6 month out of my home is when I really dug into that and realized that you need to exercise, you need to work on your vagus nerve, and you need to eat properly to for your body to function correctly. And so it's not just about eliminating things from your diet, but also about adding things in that promote detoxing. And so, and at the same time that that happened, my whole family got COVID. And so, with mold toxicity, if you keep getting exposed to toxins, you're going to keep yourself sick. So every time my family would visit me, I was being exposed to the toxins from that were on their clothing and stuff. So when they all got COVID, I was completely isolated for over a month, and that really, really helped. At the same time, I changed my diet. I started adding in all these things that I had learned about that would open my detox pathways and lower histamines in my body. So, number one was bone broth. Two, I'd have 2 or 3 apples per day. I ate a lot of bitter herbs. So, like parsley, pretty much any herb will work, but like fresh herbs like parsley, cilantro, um, oregano, fennel, all those anise, all those kinds of things. Um, and ginger was huge because that lowers histamine as well. Um, Turmeric, which also can act kind of like a laxative, and it lowers inflammation. Cardamom, galangal root. Galangal root is probably not as well known, but we use it in Southeast Asian cooking. It's very similar to ginger, like it has a different flavor. It's a root, but it does the same kind of function. Um, I had to eat a lot of raw carrots because that was actually a binder for sterigmatocystin. Raw celery, cruciferous vegetables. I would eat like about 8 cups per day. And then for fruits, because I had the mast cell activation syndrome, I also had to be really careful about what I was eating so I wouldn't have histamine reactions. But the fruits I could eat were like blueberries, pomegranates, dragon fruit. If you're having trouble with constipation, you just need to eat one golden dragon fruit, in like 2 hours, you'll have a bowel movement. Trust me, it works. And cranberries I could have. And I did have mangoes as well. Some people can't have mangoes, but I could. So I think I mentioned most of the things. So those are just a basic list. And I made sure that I had that stuff every day. So for example, with ginger and turmeric, I would take the fresh roots and boil them and then drink the liquid all throughout the day. And that made a huge difference. And so about the 7th month, I started using the bathroom and I started to sleep.
Nice.
And then I just like steadily, slowly got better. Also during that 7th month, my doctor put me on another medication for babesia. Now, babesia is a parasite that that breaks into your red blood cells and takes the oxygen that your hemoglobin is carrying. So he put me on artemisinin and solo, which is pure artemisia. And he also had me on microbinate, which is another herbal blend that has turmeric and garlic, oregano, and olive leaf in it. And so that medication ended up also killing off a whole bunch of tapeworms.
Oh,
So
wow. No
if you
way.
have mold, yeah, if you have mold toxicity, you almost always have parasites in your gut, and they go like out of control. And so the general idea is like most American doctors think, oh, Americans don't have worms. It's all like third world country kind of thing.
Oh,
That's
I
not
know.
true.
Can I vent here real quick?
Sure, go
I
ahead. Go ahead.
Lord have mercy. You go to a farm, you ask a farmer if he's got any livestock at all, and he'll show you his cabinet for
Mm-hmm.
deworming.
Right.
Like there's no, and apparently doctors know some secret that the farmers are just wasting their money on this parasite medication. And so somehow, I mean, how does a farmer diagnose an animal with a parasite? Well, it's effed up. I mean, like there's
Mhm.
some other tricks, I'm sure, but like if you think that there are not parasites in our food system just because we have a weird looking flag compared to everyone else or unusual, I don't know, I'm sorry. I don't mean to be
That's okay.
unpatriotic. I'm patriotic. I, I'm just like, just because we live in this part of the world, like you're out of your mind. There's no
Mhm.
freaking way. So,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's just, oh, there's no parasites. We don't, you don't have, you couldn't possibly have a parasite. Like where do you get
Mhm.
your fish from? Is it other countries? Is it farmed? Is it wild? I mean, are you kidding me? Anyways, all right, back
Oh, I
to
totally agree.
back
So,
to you.
yeah, so generally, when your immune system gets compromised, especially by mold or Lyme, you tend to have just a lot of parasites growing in you that your body was probably keeping in check before. And so I had thousands um, of tapeworms coming out of me.
Nasty.
And so that was like just a secondary, like my doctor wasn't actually trying to address that. He was trying to address the babesia, which was bad enough. The babesia basically makes you feel like you can't get enough air um, because, your oxygen's being stolen. So, um, and that was a horrific time for me because I was herxing with that. So I was constantly like even my lungs were cramping um, from the lack of oxygen. So, but once I killed off those tapeworms, I also saw a really big jump in my health. And so by May, so guys, in September, I was bedridden. By May, I was able to play tennis again and like hang out with my family and, do active stuff. Um,
Wow,
and
that's just huge.
yeah, I opened my businesses, my bakery again. The second week of May, I got bit by another tick,
Of course.
and I literally felt it bite me, and I pulled it off like instantly. 3 days later, I had horrible fever, and I had a bullseye on my right where that bite was. So anybody who tells you that the tick has to be on you for 24 hours before or you won't get Lyme, that's completely false. Um, but I was still on all of these herbs anyways. So my doctor was like, well, you're probably going to be okay because we have you on this stuff. And 2 weeks, or then over the next month, I had 8 more tick bites, like deer tick bites. And the first week of June, I got a giant bullseye on my right thigh, my other leg. And with that, I also end up getting a really bad kidney infection. So I was like right back down, guys. But I had been on all these herbs the whole time, and they added in um, azithromycin and Bactrim. And I was really afraid to take antibiotics again because the summer before I was so sick from them. But that was because I was living in mold. So if you're living in mold, you tend to have allergic reactions to antibiotics. And at this time, I had pretty much detoxed that all those toxins. So I could handle I was able to handle the antibiotic as well as those herbs. And by the middle of August, I was pretty much back to where I was at in the beginning of May before I got those extra bites. So that's really quick to recover from these bites. And then this whole time I've been studying mold avoidance. And that is an idea that a man named Eric Johnson developed, where you basically, if you're someone who's going to react to mold like I do, you have to stay away from it and spend most of your time outdoors. And the other thing that mold avoidance really pushes is the idea of locations effect. Have you ever heard of that?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, but go ahead.
Okay. So locations effect basically is this idea that there are certain spots in the world where there's just this perfect combination of air quality, maybe electromagnetic fields, who knows, like the right geological stuff happening where you will not have symptoms. And so I found a spot like that in August, like near the end of August, on the shore of Lake Michigan near Two Rivers, Wisconsin. There's a state park called Point Beach State Park. So I had been there before, like a couple weeks earlier, and I noticed like I felt really good, but I thought it was a coincidence. So I went there again, and within 30 minutes, I had zero symptoms, except I still had like a slow brain. My brain took a little longer to heal. And I remember telling my family, like, there's something weird here. I don't want to leave. So I ended up not leaving. I stayed in through most of September, and my brain even healed. Like I had zero symptoms. I started running every day on the beach. I was like back to normal, like a healthy person. And yeah, I did not want to leave that beach, but life goes on. I had to go back home. And thankfully we had a really nice fall. So if I ever felt a little tired, I would go back there, spend the day and get rejuvenated. And I was really good, guys, until like I was so good, we decided that because I've been living alone this whole time by myself in the woods with like no running water, just minimal, like a 15 amps of electricity, like nothing really. And I have a very minimalist life. And my whole family is separated from me. And so we decide we would like to move back together. So we try. And 3 weeks in, I get what seems like COVID. And so I lost my sense of smell, which then means I have no way of telling whether something's molding or not, because normally I can smell the mold. And within a few days, I could tell I was experiencing toxicity again.
Could I jump in real quick,
Sure.
just because I want to give a little bit of support on what you're saying right now with the locations effect.
Yeah,
So it might sound a little woo
that's
to the
okay.
viewers.
I totally know. Yeah.
So I just want to throw in that at least the theory in the book is that cellular detox is a two-way street. And this is the book. This is not me.
Yeah.
I like the idea, but anyways, the cellular detox is a two-way street. And if you've been exposed for long periods of time to, toxins in general, mold especially, or mold being one of them, that cellular detox just sorts of shuts down. And it's no longer a two-way street. And you just kind of live a heavy, less productive, kind of energetically less healthy, but it's a defense mechanism. So to get to that healed point, you get into these super clean spots, usually at higher elevations. But super clean spots, it doesn't matter, whatever works for you. And I did also in support of what we're talking about. If you think about mercury poisoning in Japan, for instance. This is a little far off field, but it serves a good point. There's a lake that a company was dumping their elemental mercury into, which, it's the 40s, like who gives a rip? Mercury isn't bioavailable. It's fine. The vapor, it'll sink to the bottom of the lake, no problems. The problem is microbes began to incorporate the mercury, and made it very bioavailable. The methyl form is very bioavailable. But this happened in history again with arsenic in wallpaper, and that was being released directly by mold. People were just dropping, in their home, their nice green walls in the Victorian area. And that's the other theory, is that this sort of general pollution or pollution in an area, mold takes that pollution, which maybe isn't, on paper, a bad pollution or a big problem. Someone's shit. I'll just ignore that. Am I still coming through?
Yeah, you paused for a second, but it's okay now.
Okay. So it's just making it bioavailable, and that's why you want to avoid it. Okay, now I have to cut.
That's
I have to
good
charge.
No, that's good information. And cut in any time that I'm missing something, because like I read that book, The Beginner's Guide to Mold Avoidance, when I was really sick. So
Yeah.
I'm sure that there are things that my brain like couldn't comprehend all the way. But the general idea was I knew I had to get to a good location, and so when I found that spot, it it's basically, I would say, it's not that you are healed, it's that you have this magic trick. So like I still react to molds. Like I'm still super sensitive, and this is what I was getting at. Like 5 weeks ago, basically I ended up having what we think is a stroke, because I got exposed to a mold. So like I had to move back out into this little cabin. So I only got to live with my family for 3 weeks. And so I moved back here one night. One night my husband came with some dinner, and within like 2 minutes, I started feeling weird. And I told him my head is hurting. It was really hurting, like a big like line across. And then all of a sudden I couldn't open my eyes, and I started talking kind of weirdly. And then my head just went down on my table, and I was conscious, like I could hear, but I literally couldn't move my body. He gathered the food and like left really quickly, because he's used to it now. He knows like, oh, there must be something moldy, like because he can't smell it. He doesn't know. And I couldn't smell it because I had COVID, and so I lay like that for like 20 minutes, and then I finally like kind of come to, but I'm super groggy, and then I go up and fall asleep. And then since then I had really bad headaches. I developed some really weird symptoms. My cognitive ability was completely fine, but my emotional state was weird. I basically developed what seemed like narcolepsy, where you just fall asleep all the time. And so I started researching that, and turns out there aren't really any studies about mold exposure in narcolepsy, but there are about pesticide exposure in narcolepsy. So people who have like really high exposure levels to pesticides have like 5 times the rate of developing narcolepsy. So I started researching that, and what causes narcolepsy is usually a lack of the peptide orexin, and orexin controls your sleep, your appetite, and your dopamine levels. And so I was like, so I'm starting to get back to normal now, but for like a whole month, I was like happy all the time. It was really weird. I was like on this high. It was very bizarre. So it's much better than being angry like I was last year, right? But um, but my sleep pattern was way off. Like I couldn't stay awake during the day, and at night, like I'll sleep for like 30 to 40 minutes and then wake up and then fall asleep again. Wake up, fall asleep. Like it's just not right. So now I wasn't sure what was going on, and I wanted to, because I had those high levels of gliotoxins before, and gliotoxins cause brain tumors and liver cancer. Um, so I decided I'm going to go in for an MRI to make sure that I don't have something weird going on, And during the MRI, I've had lots of MRIs before, and they were all normal. I just fell asleep, and they found stuff in the past, but like this one, I felt like um, I was basically having electric shocks in my brain, and at one point I felt like this really bad pain in my head, and then like a bubble burst. That's what it felt like. And but on the MRI, they found that I had a new brain lesion, and that was it. So that could be the cause of all my headaches that I've been having lately. But the neurologist, honestly, a neurologist has never been any help to me. But he basically said, like, that he thinks that it was probably a mold exposure that, caused this to happen, and that there was nothing he could do about it. And so he just told me, that's it. That's where you're at. So, and then when I went home from that, and since that MRI, I started to have numbness in my face. It feels like Novocaine, like a shot of Novocaine. So something happened during the MRI to my brain, and I think that caused that. But now it's been like 2 weeks, and I'm starting to not have that very much. So I really do feel like with proper diet, proper care, you can heal. Because I've had brain lesions in the past, and when they did this MRI, they were all gone except for this new one. So my brain healed, and I want to encourage you guys that, like, I know it's super scary to go through this kind of stuff, but at the same time, you got to trust that your body is designed to heal itself. That's what our immune systems are for, right? So if we can support that really well, I do feel like I'm going to be okay. I just have to keep avoiding mold. And other mold avoiders, like, there have been people doing this for like 10, 15 years, and they still are avoiding mold. Like it goes through changes, like, and I just kind of come to this conclusion, like, I'm just not going to be a normal person anymore for now. Like, I'm going to, live alone, and like I can function. I'm doing really well, like on a day-to-day basis. And I still, like, I go out to the store and do other like normal stuff, but I get a sense, like this morning, for example, my kids had their violin lessons. And so I went in with them, but like instantly I walk in the room and I can tell something's not right in there. So I walk right back out. I didn't feel good for a while, but now that I'm home, I'm okay, you know? So, and usually I have to shower, and I'll be okay, or take a nap and I'll be okay. So, when I say, like, when people say, oh, you've healed, technically, no. I mean, yes, I've recovered to a certain extent. I feel like I've tried to figure out the best way to say it. But so now I started using the phrase, like, I made significant health gains, like I'm doing well. I don't want to ever say that I'm cured, because I could go to the store and collapse tomorrow, if somebody has some sort of toxin in. And I don't want to give people this false impression that I know it all and I'm like the one that will give them all the answers, because I'm healed, and I'm not necessarily healed. I'm just doing really well. So,
Cool.
so do you have any more questions for me? I know I talked forever. Sorry.
Oh no, that was brilliant. I mean, you covered a lot. But I had new questions kind of arise.
Yeah, go
Um,
ahead.
can you hear me okay actually? Because I had to cut to a different.
Yeah, I can hear you just fine.
Oh, okay. Because I had to drop the I had
Yeah,
to
that's
sorry. All right, as long as the audio is still good. Let's see. Oh yeah, I was kind of curious, like if you could go into how you found, or maybe give tips on like finding a doctor who doesn't give you antidepressants and a pat on the ass after he does his third test. You know what I mean? Like that. How did that go? And I assume it's a private doctor, or
yeah. Um so I didn't go into my previous history. You know, I most likely have had Lyme my entire life. So I've been through this ringer of going to the doctor, them not believing you, wanting to give you antidepressants, that kind of stuff. I, I was misdiagnosed with MS, fibromyalgia, depression, that kind of, and I think I've always just had this inner like strength to be like, you're wrong, like, so I didn't want to take those kinds of meds, but so many people end up getting misdiagnosed and put on these things. So when this whole thing came around again, like I knew to listen to myself and be like, I know that I have Lyme. And like, you can't tell, because at one point the doctor called me and is like, congratulations, your test was negative. And I still have the bullseye on my leg, like,
yeah,
so,
yeah.
like, so,
Oh, your labs are
I,
good. High five. Yeah, that
yeah.
one.
So so at this point, like, I was 44 when this started. I'm old enough now to like stand up for myself and say, I'm just not going to listen to you. And so then I joined a Lyme group on Facebook, and there's like 20,000 or 30,000 people in that group. And so they start talking about LLMD. No idea what that means. I had to Google it. It's Lyme literate medical doctor. So then I Googled that for Wisconsin, and like 3 or 4 names came up. So I call these clinics, and it's like $1,500, $2,000 for your initial appointment. And like I hadn't been working all for months because of my illness. So, like, we have no money, like, how am I supposed to afford that? And then actually one of my customers from my bakery messaged me and said, oh my, like, I went to this clinic in northeastern Wisconsin, and they do take insurance for all of the labs, and it's not as expensive. So I basically just went with the cheapest private clinic that I could find. And would I have gotten better care somewhere else? Most likely. But they knew what they were doing as far as meds. But like I think I mentioned before, they didn't help me with lifestyle or diet or exercises or anything else. They just they just knew like which herbs to use, which antibiotics to use. So they were really good with that. Um, and so now when I see people online, like they just get diagnosed at they have a bullseye or whatever, and the regular doctor wants to give them just like 2 weeks of doxycycline. Like I always try to step in and say, take the doxycycline, but find a private doctor, because you're just going to end up getting sicker, and it's going to be chronic. Or people who are chronic and they figured it out finally, and their doctors want to just give them 3 weeks of doxycycline. It's not going to work. And the problem is people are like, it's expensive. So people are just terrified to get out of the mainstream medical world because they're going to have to pay out of pocket. But I can guarantee you that if you get a good doctor, you will get better so much faster. You'll actually end up spending less money, and you will feel better. Like, I feel like it's not worth it to stay sick and continue with a regular doctor who doesn't really know how to treat you. So, yeah, so that was my journey. And I, you know, I have since found another doctor that I would recommend far over the one that I saw, but I probably shouldn't do that on YouTube. So, but if someone
Yeah, I
really
don't
needs,
know if we should or shouldn't. Like, do they
yeah,
want? I don't. Do they want to be plugged, or do they want to get?
I
Are
know
they
some
afraid
people
to get pushed
don't.
out? It's like, what?
Right.
Yeah,
So usually naturopathic doctors are pretty good, and functional medicine doctors are pretty good, in general. So if you can look for somebody with those credentials, who's Lyme literate, and you can interview the doctor too. Like, you can ask them what they think about mold toxicity, and if they have no clue what you're talking about, like, stay clear. Or ask them about EMFs, or ask them about these other like weirder things that that most people wouldn't know about. They should know about that kind of stuff if they're going to be a good doctor for you. Um, so yeah, so that's my take on it. It's better to go to a private clinic than to try to
yeah.
struggle.
What what did you do? Did you like find mold in the house then, in the main house, and remediate, or try
Yeah,
and make it better, or what did you go
yeah,
for?
we did. So we had mold testing, like a professional company come in, and our house did not test at toxic levels for mold. They did
Uh-huh.
find mold in specific areas. It was in our basement, and so we had water leaking in through the foundation, and we had a dirt basement. Did I already tell you all this
Okay.
stuff? I can't remember.
Uh-uh.
So, so that spring that I got sick, we had a couple things happen. One, we installed 5G in our house, and the router was in my bedroom. Now, like, that's a whole nother story that is part of my story, but like, that makes mold grow at like 400 times its rate. So, um, so then we had all this rainwater coming in the basement, and we had this old farmhouse. So it's like about 100 years old, and the floor is a dirt floor. And so, like, we knew that this was happening, but like, what could we do about it? Nothing really. Um, and so, and when we bought this house, we had the ductwork replaced. One thing we didn't know was the guy that did it was like kind of a scammer. He went out of business like within a year, but um he didn't connect all the ducts together. Like, normally it's supposed to be a closed circuit, right? And so it turns
He made it
out,
look like he did some work and then he laughed. That's
yeah,
hilarious. Yeah,
well, it cost me almost my
terrible.
life,
Yeah,
you
no
know?
kidding.
So the duct that went to right to our bedroom, like right next to my bed, was just dangling down into this basement. And I don't know why we didn't notice it, but we didn't. And so I was breathing in these toxins from this mold while I was bedridden. Um, so I think, did I skip over the part where I had a lumbar puncture and then got a spinal fluid leak? I think I did in my story
No.
before.
Yeah, you did skip it. Sorry.
Yeah. So I was bedridden from that. Like, when you have a spinal fluid leak, if you sit up, um, your brain actually ends up settling and hitting your skull. And so it like feels like your head's gonna explode. So I was told I had to lay flat in bed until it healed. And so that was almost 3 weeks. Then I was constantly in bed, breathing in all these toxins that were like coming up from the basement. And that's when, like, I already had toxicity before that, but like, that's when it just went like really, really bad. And so also our basement, we ended up getting a professional crew to come in, dig out all the dirt, like the like 3 or 4 feet of dirt, and then fill it all in with concrete. And then we also identified our laundry room had mold. So my husband did it himself because we didn't have money. We had this company come in and tell us it was going to cost $50,000 to remediate our house, you know. And here, like, we didn't even have the
Yeah.
money for my medication. You're like, we basically went into debt with our credit cards, like $28,000
Oh
to
wow.
take care of me. And to my husband, ended up, you know, tearing out the flooring himself, redoing our laundry room. And I still couldn't go in the house without getting sick. So most people with levels that I had, remediation is not going to be enough. There's always going to be something that they miss, you know, in that cleaning. So for some people, and it's just one spot in their home, like it's a new home, and they like maybe had a leaky sink or something, and they can tear all that out and be okay. But with that old of a house, you know, yeah, and it was not, it still is not safe for me.
Yeah.
So, and remediation is expensive. So, but anybody else going in their house is fine. It's just me.
Yeah. Can you cover the herbs that you've taken and for what? Just, I mean, obviously not,
Definitely.
yeah, I'm just totally curious. So,
Yeah. So for Lyme, I was given cemento and banderol, which basically is just cat's claw and Japanese knotweed, but it's a specific brand. I think it's Nutrimetics.
oh
And
yeah,
then,
I've heard that one.
yeah, for the Bartonella. And so that also started to kill my Bartonella. Bartonella and Lyme, you know, they're both killed by doxy. So it makes sense that a lot of the herbs will also kill both. But I was also given berberine for Bartonella. And then for Babesia, I was given, like I said, the artemisinin solo and microbinate. So that's all pretty simple. The other thing that you have to take is a cyst buster. So if you know anything about bacteria, when bacteria start to feel threatened, like their environment isn't safe for them, they will form a cyst around themselves. It's basically just a hard outer layer to protect themselves. And then with Lyme bacteria specifically, but Bartonella does this too, they will like go hide in your organs. So instead of being in your bloodstream where they can be easily killed, they will go into your organs and hide out there until the environment seems friendly again for them. And then they'll come back and make you sick all over again. And so when you are killing off these pathogens with like antimicrobial herbs or with antibiotics, it doesn't matter, either one, you have to go onto a cyst buster so that these bacteria don't just go hide. And so the problem for me was that most cyst busters they usually have a combination of herbs, and they always will have black walnut hulls in them, like, and because it works. But I'm allergic to walnuts, so I couldn't take those.
Okay.
So if I hadn't been, my doctor wanted me to be on biocidin, which has black walnut hulls. And then the other one he wanted me to try was Crypto Plus, which is cryptolepsis with black walnut hulls. And those are just well known, they work. The other thing that can work is oregano. And that's why he put me on the microbinate because it has oregano in it. But then to supplement this, he had me take a supplement called Baluke. It's Boluoke, and it's earthworms.
Oh,
So
of course it is.
yeah, so it's a Chinese herbal medicine thing that traditionally was used to break up blood clots, but they found that it also breaks into these cysts. So I was put on that. And that, so it sounds really simple. I didn't do any like ozone therapy or like, you know, like any weird stuff. Or I think what I want to tell everybody is like the biggest thing that you can do for yourself when you're trying to heal is to get yourself into a good location. You know, this locations effect. Like I was in a bad location in my home, but out here in my little cabin, it might not be as good as like a mountaintop or like that beach that I healed at. But like in Wisconsin, we have pretty good air quality in general. I'm out here in the woods and it's quiet. I don't have I'm not overstimulated. I don't have any Wi-Fi signals. I don't have like all this stuff that could kind of bring my body down. And so I really feel like because I'm out here by myself in this great environment, that's why I was able to heal in the time frame that I could. And because I figured out the diet and I figured out like vagus nerve stuff. Yeah, so either that or I just got lucky, right? I don't know. Because most people with chronic Lyme, like they stay sick for years. Not like I did, you know. So
Yeah. What kind of treatments are you kind of thinking? Do you have anything on the radar to try? Oh, actually, before I do that, let's go back to meds or herbs. What did you take? What did you do for mold then? What did you do herbs wise for mold or
well,
medication wise or whatever?
nothing. So the
Okay.
doctor had told me to take GI detox. That's what he told me to do.
That
And
was it?
yeah, that was it. And I couldn't even take it because I was constipated all the time.
Right,
Right.
right.
So he did not believe that I had mold colonized in my body.
Okay.
Um, and I mean, he's a Lyme doctor who knows a little bit about mold, not a mold doctor, you know. So, um, but I guess he was right. You know, I'm sure I had candida because my tongue was like white and you could
Oh
not
yeah.
scrape it, you know.
Me
But
too.
I
It's
think,
just terrible.
yeah. So you wouldn't have wanted to see my tongue. But
Yeah.
he had me, I didn't mention, he had me on a really good probiotic as well. Um, and there are, like with gliotoxins, there's really very little known about what will actually bind with gliotoxins, except they know that probiotics do, like if you have a good probiotic. So part of it was he could have just been smart and known, because steric too, there's very little that will bind that, but like raw carrots will. You know, so like it could have just been like he gave me this GI detox as a general, because that has charcoal, that has bentonite clay, it has I think it might, I don't know if it has some sort of chlorella or something in there, but like that's like a catch-all, find like a pill that you can take. Um
Yeah. I've taken
and
that.
I only took it a couple times because I was improving so much once I changed my diet. Um my body was just detoxing on its own. And I really think that oftentimes, unless you have an actual fungal infection, like in your sinuses or in your lungs or in your ear cavities, or whatever, like if you get out of the bad environment and you get your detox pathways open, your body will naturally try to heal itself. It doesn't want to be toxic, you know.
Yeah.
And I think my body did. So I'm probably atypical in that I didn't seem to have another like infection, like a fungal infection. So I'm fortunate. Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, my doctor, he went different. Mine mold thing was totally different. But I guess this interview about you, so I don't know.
That's okay.
I'm going for it. So the he real high on stigmatic toxin. Um, I forget that's penicillium and another one. And then I did a test and it said I had the other one. It was really just my air conditioner, my wall unit air conditioner.
Mm.
And I asked apartment manager, and they're like, "Yeah, here's a new air conditioner for you. The new ones suck, but there you go." And so that
You
was
didn't move?
done. What?
You didn't move or anything?
No. And then my doctor recommended some sort of a mold tea clear, and I fogged. I bought a fogger and I fogged. He said that's probably good enough because I didn't have like dripping water or anything like that.
Mhm.
And I know it's like heresy in those mold groups are like freaking out on me and angry. And seriously, I was like, oh, see, I fogged, and here's my fogger I bought. I got a good deal for $50, or and here's the enzymes I sprayed. Oh, holy hell! I was attacked. I was
Like
there
I was gonna
all
say,
over
yeah,
me.
yeah, I would say that. Yeah, people yell at you for that.
Yeah, it's like a religion. One guy, in fact, he kept going back and forth. He was some sort of a industrial. He seemed like he was probably an industrial hygienist,
Mhm.
and it kept going back and forth and back and forth. I'm like, wait a second. And then I noticed one person kept like chiming in a very insipid ways about how he was right. I'm like, you son of a bitch. And then I responded underneath. I was like, the use of sock puppet accounts is punished severely on this group and on social media. And I got double blocked all of a sudden. Both of them, apparently, even though they are in different states, they blocked me at
Mhm.
a minute of each other. I was like, there we go. So social media people are like, there's some freaks out there, and
Yeah,
some of them use sock puppet accounts. So,
yeah,
um,
I do think that, and when I freaked out because I thought that everybody in those mold groups was as sick as me, and so then and they're like keeping all their stuff and like staying in their apartments, I'm like, what are you doing? Like get out, you know. But I've become wiser in my time. Like I realized, like I don't know when it was I realized it, but I was like realized, wait, like there are people in this group who aren't even sick, and it's like toxic mold something something. I can't remember the name of that group that we're in. Right? Did I meet you in there? Yeah, yeah.
maybe.
But
Yeah,
like
I'm in so many.
I don't know if you, yeah, probably, but like yeah, it just like hit me like, wait, this person just saw some mold in their washing machine. They're not even sick, you know? And where like my reaction is like, move out of the house, get rid of all your stuff because it just made such a huge difference in my life. Like I would have died if I had stayed in my home. I wanted to die because I couldn't function and it was in so much fear and so much pain. Like, so for me to see somebody else suffering like that and staying in it is really, really hard, because I feel like the answer is so simple. Just get out, but it's not the same for everybody because not everybody is sick in the same way that I was. Um, but yeah, there are definitely people who really do just need to leave their home and go camping like I did and
Oh, for sure.
and make the leap and get rid of your stuff, so
Yeah,
yeah.
maybe I could benefit from that too, but I was just high and I was high in steroid magnetoxic alone. I found the
Mhm.
source, I remediated the
Yeah.
source. I really didn't have the energy to move again. Um, and
Mhm.
so I just stayed and I thought, I had new carpet anyways. I had new flooring and new carpet when I moved in. So I rented a rug doctor, and after I fogged, I let that soak in. I ran the
Mhm.
rug doctor because it probably wasn't really saturated. It was new carpet, you know what I mean? So, I mean, I could do a follow up mold test. I think that might be what I'll be doing. And if it's
Mhm.
low, which my doctor, just knowing me, my story and everything, he expects it to be probably cleared. He's like, it'd be a good idea, but so all right, back to you.
That's fine.
Sorry, let me get my question list up and see what I missed here. Um, Okay, yeah, I think we covered all that. What would be helpful? Others, no. Yeah, anything else you kind of want to share about, like, I don't know, anything else that would be helpful, or maybe, I had some more relationship questions. I didn't
Sure.
put them in this one, but like, I've heard of people with their family just getting blacklisted by the whole family, like freaky stuff. Like, oh, like she'll get better once it's out of her head, and like this lady's whole family turned on her. So like, any advice on that front? I know that didn't happen to you, obviously, but
Well, yes, it did and it didn't. Like I I'm separated from my family, you know, not because they don't love me or they think I'm crazy. I think they did think I was crazy for a while,
yeah,
but they can also see what a huge difference moving out made and what a huge difference just being in contact with mold would make, you know. But I remember them being like, well, how can you have this big reaction on just a split second of smelling mold? It's not like it gives you toxicity instantly. Like that was their thinking, like that as soon as I moved out, I didn't have toxicity. So then I shouldn't have reactions, like they just didn't comprehend it. Um,
I really
so
think it's your body's fighting for it. Your neurology is like, it's a
yeah,
warning sign. It's
yeah,
there's symptoms and there's warning signs. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
right. It's your body basically saying you're in danger right now, get out. So um yeah, so I still feel like it's a work in progress. Like, I don't want to bash my family at all because I feel like without them, I could have never even had this place, like they were supportive of me. But yet they still don't understand it, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Like I'm alone. I feel alone most of the time, like emotionally alone because we just can't connect, uh, like we used to. And that's really hard and sad. And I feel like, I'm a positive person in general, but at the same time, like you need to realize I lost everything. Like I lost all my possessions. I lost my family. Like they're still there, but they're not with me. I lost like my businesses. I had to close them down. I lost friendships because I couldn't be around people. So I feel like everybody who goes through this is going to go through this hard stuff relationship wise. One thing that I feel like is super important to know is that when you are trying to heal from something like this, you already have so much negativity and so many fears and so much anger and so much loss. You don't need to add on to that by having any sort of toxic people in your life. So if there are people who are like your friend, but they don't believe you, and every time you're with them, they're making like little comments like, well, why don't you just get up? Why don't you just go get a job? Why don't you just, whatever. Like you need to get those kind of people out of your life. You can say to them, like, for right now, while I'm healing, I'm not going to be able to spend time with you maybe someday again in the future, but like you need to have positive people around you who are going to support you and encourage you because it is hard enough just to go through it. It's impossible if you are being dragged down every day by people who just don't believe you and who will like malign your spirit. And you
yeah,
can't have that. So yeah. So I encourage people to kind of figure out who is being toxic and stay away. Like, and just surround yourself with people who will support you and love you and maybe not completely understand, but at least they're trying. And so relationships are hard. Yeah. So
yeah. I don't think anyone really totally believes. Well, I mean, I don't know. Like I show them lab work, they don't. You know what I mean? So I have to be. I'm real forgiving with everyone. And like the worst of them, yeah, I'm done. But
yeah.
I have to just kind of deal. You know what I'm saying? But,
Yeah. I think like with me, I do feel like I went through all of this for a purpose. I have to believe that. Otherwise, is just super sad, right? So
Yeah.
I feel like this whole experience made me so much more empathetic,
Yeah,
um,
totally.
and so much more compassionate, like, especially for people with mental health issues. Like, I went from being this like super mom, like, like, I mean, I look good, when I look back at what all I could do and what I was doing, I was successful. And, um, and my life was good, and I was I volunteered lots of hours. I gave lots of money away. Like I was doing really well, like in my businesses and in my relationships, and like my kids were being successful, and I'm the one who educated them, and they're getting to college just fine. Like um, I was I was impressive, and then I went from that to wanting to kill myself, like and being just unable to function physically or emotionally in a normal way, and not being able to even finish a sentence. Like I couldn't remember the words, and I didn't know where I was half the time. Like, and it really made me compassionate for other people who are probably just misunderstood. They have no advocate. They have nobody there who's actually willing to go the extra mile to figure out what the root cause is behind their mental health issues, you know? So I feel like I have a completely different perspective on life now that I've suffered. And so suffering isn't necessarily a bad thing, um, especially when you can get to the other side of it. Like
Yeah.
it can change you for the better. So that's my perspective right now.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's see. That was heavy. That was really
Mm.
heavy.
Yeah, sorry.
Let's see. We better do something. We'll just kind of let's before we wrap it up. Like, where do you go for like more help, more information, more support, that kind of thing?
So where do I go? Is that what you're
Yeah.
asking me?
Where do you recommend or?
That's actually a tough question because I've done so much by myself. Like
Yeah.
I had to read a lot.
Yeah.
So um so I use the internet a lot I read a lot of medical journals and medical research, which is heavy stuff,
Yeah.
which like it's hard to read. So I learned a lot of vocabulary. And I'm in
Yeah.
a like a special place because my brother is a doctor, or he was a
Uh-huh.
doctor. Turns out he has all the same illnesses as I do. So
Oh wow.
that's a whole other story. And maybe sometime we can talk about it. But if I hadn't gotten sick, he wouldn't have gotten well. So that's another thing that's huge in my life. And I feel like it's part of the reason why I was allowed to get sick. Um, but so when I have a like question medically, if I'm reading some sort of journal, I can always ask my brother, which is great. Um, so yeah, so I would just say that do a lot of research. The other thing, like right now, for example, I'm reading polyvagal theory for therapy, which is actually written for therapists. It's not written for like lay people, but so I'll read books like that where I'm actually learning a whole concept of I'm learning about the vagus nerve and how it can be used to help people recover from all sorts of mental health issues. And so I read stuff like that, and then I try to apply it. Um, um,
Is it a book? You're reading a whole
but
book?
otherwise, yeah, that's yeah,
Awesome.
yeah. You can get like medical books, through Amazon, right? You can become like
Yeah.
a doctor by just reading. So yeah. So the original book, the polyvagal theory, is written for doctors. And so that one is like really kind of doctory, like really hard to understand because of all the medical terminology. So this one is more of a practical use, like for how to apply the polyvagal theory. And so I would recommend that book if you're interested in like healing your fight or flight issues, like because people who get sick like us, we tend to get stuck in this fight or flight state, and that can actually affect even your bowels and how your body can function. So yeah, I could go on and on and on about your vagus nerve, but that would take another hour.
Very
So
cool.
yeah, so I tend to go on these like quests for knowledge for like specific things. So for a while I was studying HPU, KPU, which is a thing that a lot of Lyme people have, where their bodies don't absorb vitamin B or zinc properly, and then they get all these strange issues. And so I was reading like medical journals and research papers on all of this, and watching like medical conference like videos on YouTube about it, like so that I just get completely immersed in things. And I think that's partly just I love to research. So I would just recommend to everyone to do that research. Like if you have Lyme, for example, you should at least read was it Dr. Rawls' book. I can't remember what that's called.
Unlocking Lyme.
Healing Lyme, Unlocking Lyme, or like the Buhner book or the herb book. Or if you suspect you have mold toxicity, you should read Toxic by Neil Nathan, or A Beginner's Guide to Mold Avoidance by Eric Johnson. You know, there's a lot of books out there that you can read. I think one of the main problems though is that people with our issues, or my issues, our brains don't work very well. And so reading was hard for me at first. So if you can, but so was listening. I couldn't have noise. So I had to just slowly read, and often I had to reread because I would read it and then I forget what I just read, you know.
You can do
So
like audiobooks, or the noise bothered you?
the noise really bothered me. Yeah.
Oh.
I basically was in here in silence for many, many months. And not until like my brain healed could I like handle listening to music. And I was a musician, like our whole family is musicians. So being without music was sad. So that was another thing I lost. Um, just quickly, one thing that I would say that helped me though, like on the emotional side of it, was I had to develop something new, like a new hobby for myself to distract myself from all the suffering and sorrow and all the loss that I had. And so I started teaching myself how to draw and paint. And so I just completely immersed myself in that. And I feel like there needs to be something in your life that is beautiful when you're suffering. And whether or not you're good at drawing, but like we might not make something beautiful, but like everybody will be different. And for me, like my brain started working differently, and I was suddenly like started to have abilities like I could draw where I couldn't do that before, you know. So it was weird. I could also understand physics and math, like and calculus. It was really bizarre when when my brain slowed way down, like I could comprehend those things. So now my brain is a lot faster.
Oh.
Yeah, it was really cool. So I was teaching my kids calculus and like understanding it. Like I never had calculus in school. Yeah, it was really bizarre. And like physics, like it was like so mind blowing. I could understand physics and like how things actually, like the math actually fits, and how everything, yeah, it was just really cool. So I had a whole new world open up because my brain was so slow. Yeah, it's really different. So anyways, I'm rambling now, but
Oh no, it's great. This is one of my this was all great. Let's promote your channel again. It's just
Just my name, Johanna Vang. Yeah.
Okay, I wanted to say
So,
it that way, but I got scared. I
yeah,
didn't know how to say it.
you're good.
Because I said
Yeah.
it wrong a couple of times and I just was scared.
Yeah,
So,
that's okay. You can always just say Joe, but my channel is Johanna Vang, Vang.
okay, cool. I'm going to stop recording and then stay on for a second. We'll just,
Sure. Thanks for having me.
yeah, thank you. Let me find the stop recording button. This is ridiculous. Oh yeah, like and subscribe and do the same for Johanna Vang. All right.
Yeah. Thanks.
All right, bye.